Thank you all for coming. On behalf of the Marketing Association, I'm David Brown. I'm the VP of Member Education. So we have a lovely panel of 6 second years, and the purpose of this event is to leverage their insights and how they spent their summers to then use that information for you all to hopefully have a successful summer and land the full-time offer that we are all searching. So I have some questions that I will ask to 2 or 3 of each of the panelists, and then we'll open that up probably about 20 minutes of those questions, and then open up some questions for you all at the end if you have more specific questions.
Make friends with the admin assistants because they're basically the keys to everything that you actually need to get done in any given job. Like they know where the copiers are, they know when you can FedEx stuff. Like they'll be, some of your greatest allies during the summer. So actually, don't ignore your admins.
I like the second that because my admin actually helped me a lot. She went above and beyond what she's even supposed to do with helping me get materials printed and get on people's calendars. I think that's a really big piece of advice.
I would say also just on the first day, my day was the same as Steve's, but one thing I did when I met with my manager to go over my projects, I at that point set up a time that we would have a weekly one-on-one meeting that first day, so I got it on the calendar that day for the rest of the summer, because you don't know how busy or not busy your manager is, so at least you'll know you have a dedicated half an hour once a week to play catch up, talk about milestones, any issues that could wait for that moment, so I would say definitely do that on your first day when you do discuss your projects.
And just another softball, basic question. So what kind of hours did you guys work? And did it vary at different points in the summer, or was it consistent throughout?
For me, I typically got into the office about 8:30 in the morning, and I'd leave about 5:30. I would typically check email again later on at night. There were times, though, when I did some, as we were launching products across the chain, I did some overnight things where I was up for about 24 hours managing things. But I think in general, for me, it wasn't a lot of really late nights or a lot of weekends or anything like that.
I'd say it depends heavily on the company culture. So at American Express, everyone was in there by like 8:45, take a full hour for lunch exactly at noon. Like everybody, it's almost a joke. And then you leave at 5:30 to 6. And a lot of interns thought if you stay later, it'll show that you're working harder. But it was actually kind of viewed negatively. If you stayed way longer, people would poke their head in and say, no one's looking, why are you burning the midnight oil? And it's only 7 p.m. But when it comes down to towards the end of your internship, when you're getting ready to present your final presentation, I guess just you're expected to do as much as it takes to get it done. So towards the end, we were doing multiple revisions before presenting to our director, and I was, redoing drafts at midnight and sending it to my manager, and my manager was replying at 2 a.m., then another draft at 4, and then representing it at 8:45 the next morning. So when it calls for it, do it, but don't just try to sit there and put face time.
So when my manager sent me a long email introducing herself and telling me what brand I was going to be on. And of course, they're always going to say, don't do any research, you'll be fine when you get here, don't worry about it, and don't listen to that. I did as much research as I could on the brand, just basic things like competitor, 4 Ps basically, what was going on with the brand, just because when you get there, you are expected to know the basic things, and it shows that you're actually interested. But I would just say, I created a Google alert, so every day I got emails about articles that were affecting swab and just Unilever as a whole, and just also the industry, since hair is very different than food. I did a lot of background research on the hair industry as well, so I think just be as prepared as you possibly can be, just so you, that's one less thing that you have to worry about when you start.
I would also second that, be proactive. I emailed my manager beforehand to, tell her literally that I wanted to get a running start on my first day. So please send over any information she thinks I should have read. And she sent over some articles But both when I started at MX and when I started at P&G, my first like couple of days was spent just reading decks. I don't know if you guys got decks
Yeah,
too.
like lots of
They just
them.
hand you like tons of decks and send you decks, so you get familiar with the projects they've been working on, like their overall business. So if you can somehow find out who your manager is and send them an email before your internship even starts, like if there's any decks you want to share with me so I can read through them and get a running start, that'd be great. Because you'll also find some like companies have their own jargon. So as you read through the decks, if you can like write down some of the terms you don't understand and then show up on like the first or second day and like have them run through the terms with you so you really know what's going on.
So
I wish I would have done that. That's a good idea.
One of the other things that you might that you might want to request while you're doing that is requesting the presentations for previous year's interns, just so you know where the bar is at and kind of what quality level is going to be expected of you come the end of the summer. One other thing I'd add to that is to not be intimidated by kind of where their presentation is at. It's going to seem like it's a really well-crafted and well-done presentation, but that's because they've spent, probably 10 weeks working on it, refining it, and revising it. So you will eventually get there, but I would definitely say look at that. The other thing I would say in terms of preparation ahead of time is to make sure you identify kind of what Cornell networks or just networks in general you have at the company before you get there, so you kind of figure out who your allies are and kind of where they fit in the hierarchy, and basically who are the people who will go to bat for you and your reputation at the end of something.
I took the approach of being like overly collaborative with my intern class. So if I found something that I thought would help somebody else, I would send it to them. I just figured if people wanted to be open with me, that's great, but I wanted to show that I was open with people. And I worked, and to your point, some people don't want to be collaborative, but some people are really collaborative. So I actually had an intern on another intern on Total, my brand, and we helped each other like so much. Like I helped her with her final presentation, she helped me pull data when I couldn't figure it out. So like we had a very collaborative relationship, and I think that really showed. We happen to be on the same brand, but I think it really showed with our team because our director and our manager commented on how well we got along and how well we were able to work together, even though we had completely separate projects and completely separate goals with our internships. But I took the approach of being open with everyone, and then if people want to be open with me, that was great.
Beyond being open and showing your presentation to other interns, when you're almost ready and you're just practicing and rehearsing your final presentation, at Amex, you present to kind of all the decision makers are invited. So basically, all the managers are going to sit in the room after your internship's over, and they calibrate and decide which interns come back and which don't. So it's not your manager who's the only one fighting for you, so you want as many decision makers as possible to be on your side. So you might want to invite like Cornell alums that you've talked to, anyone in finance, legal, supply chain that you've talked to or gotten information from. Invite them to like a preview and help you rehearse your presentation so that they see your presentation, they see how far you've come. So when it comes time for someone or your manager to help make a decision on whether you get the offer or not, all those people are your allies and they can speak for you. And if they're going to be sitting in your final presentation, they've heard your presentation already once from your rehearsal, and they can nod and ask the right questions and be supportive during the final presentation.
I want to focus on what you just said a little bit, and not necessarily just for the presentation, but you talked a little bit about networking with your fellow interns. So realistically, what's an appropriate level of networking? Like how far can you reach up, and is it just for the final presentations, or like how did you really go about the networking aspect of your summers?
I think it depends on the culture. So since it's agile workspace, you can sit next to VPs and directors, and so I talked to everybody. So it was the walls weren't really there, and it was a lot easier to kind of interact with people at different levels. But the thing I spent the first 2 weeks doing, maybe the week and a half. Well, this is another thing I think I want to say. Find out when you're presenting. I was the very first presenter, so that I had a week less to get things done. So my manager told me that up front, so that kind of shaped how I went about the rest of it. So just want to get that out there. But I spent the first week and a half, 2 weeks talking to anybody who would tell me about the hair industry, all the AVMs on my team, even people from different teams, Dove, just to get their take on things, and also just so they can put a name with a face. because you never know who's gonna, have a piece of information to give you down the road, give you another deck to look at. But it also shows that you are collaborative, that you're not afraid to talk to people, that you have good questions, that you can run meetings, things like that. So I really made it a point just my whole schedule is packed with talking to different people. And just asking questions and finding out about their experience at Unilever. Also, people love to talk about themselves because I think it helps establish a great name for yourself the first 2 weeks of your internship, and it shows that you're really interested in learning about not only your brand, but the rest of Unilever for the company.
I think in that initial meeting you have with your manager when they talk about the projects, one of the questions you should ask is, who are the people that I should talk to get information about these projects, and set up one-on-ones with those people and talk about what they do, how they're going to work with you on your project, and kind of different ways that doing it that way. If you want to network up and you want to network beyond the people you're going to work with, make sure you have a real reason for meeting with them. Don't just set up a meeting with a VP and then just be like, so how do you like Colgate? Like, you need to have a real strong reason, because no one wants their time wasted. So you can definitely do those meetings. Just be careful with kind of the agenda of what you're doing with that. And lastly, in terms of socializing with interns, so I think it's across the board. We had like a social committee that planned a bunch of social events for us. I would say definitely go to all the events. Don't skip out on social events because you're tired or you feel like you need to do work. Those are really important. A lot of the interns that didn't get offers at Colgate were because they hardly ever went to any of the social events. So because ABMs and BMs are the ones planning those, and they notice when you're not there and you're repeatedly not there. So make sure you carve out the time to go to all the social events. That basic. They expect you sort of to not really know anything, which is good. So if you have like those really basic questions, ask those in the first 2 weeks. They expect that. Don't ask it in week 6. Don't be afraid to, if you sound, like I thought I was going to sound like an idiot, and he was like, that's a great question, shopper marketing is a really new thing these days, like it's only been, and he went through the foundation. So just don't think you're asking stupid questions, and just don't wait too long to ask all those questions. It's okay, like they don't expect you to know much.
Also, in terms of networking, my manager was like my greatest ally. So I think your manager, if you can become close to your manager and like make it known that you're here to get a full-time offer and you want to be at this company, they're going to try to help you because it looks good on them too if their intern gets an offer because they did a good job. So what I did the first week, and this was actually advice from this exact panel last year, was in the first week, once you really understand your project, come to your manager with a timeline of how you plan to accomplish your project. Like just in Excel, like week 1, week 2, week 3, break down your summer into like 10 weeks or however long, and explain what you plan to do on each of those weeks to get to your end goal. And your manager will definitely be able to give you tips on like what you need to do in each week, because they know your project. And then ask them, who are the main contacts to accomplish any of these goals? And then they'll give you their contacts from finance and supply chain and whoever that you need to talk to each week. And they can help you prioritize those people.
Bottom line, there should be no surprises from anybody when you walk into that room to present. You should be showing your manager your deck every week you met with them. I did that with my manager, so she knew exactly where I was at every point in the game. My director knew everything, all the ABMs on my team knew what was going on. There should be absolutely no surprises when you walk in there, and your manager and your director should be back. They're beaming. They're just like, this is fantastic. So as much as it takes, you want to make sure they know where you are at every step of the game. So that way, if you're going to the left, you should be going to the right. They can correct it immediately. It doesn't happen week 10, a day before you're supposed to present.
Not result in offers. There are 2 things that kept coming up and up. From a company point of view, you get a bad manager. Sometimes it's a rookie manager who's never managed anybody. Sometimes it's an absentee manager who's doing something else. But you have to read your situation early on to make sure your manager and you are going in the right direction. And if you get in that situation where you and your manager aren't clicking, you gotta reach out and change it and work on it as soon as possible. If you're in a company that has a Cornell team, reach out to the team. Don't assume it's gonna get better. Early on, reach out to the team for help. Kate, mentioned it, where she had brought someone in to intercede. So you have to read your manager. On the other side, sometimes MBAs are immune to feedback. The ego gets in the way. And when it comes out that the intern didn't get the offer, it was usually they were told during the process that they were going in the wrong direction, that they weren't doing things right, and they were immune to the feedback. And they just kept going. And or you listened when they said you were spending too much time being analytical and you had to go. When you get that feedback, you have to listen to it, not just fight your way through the whole thing. Take the feedback and go with it. Those are the two themes, so just things to watch out for. On an entirely different thing, if you are interested in a company where you met during the recruiting process and you're interested in recruiting with them next year, or you want to sort of back yourself up in case your internship doesn't go well, you should be networking with those companies during the summer. You can't wait until you get back to school to start the recruiting process for the fall. You gotta be in contact with people during the summer saying, I'm in a great situation, learning a lot, really like this, I'd like to talk to you in the fall. Reason is companies aren't necessarily coming back and going through the recruiting process on campus in the fall. They may need a spot or two, and they're going to be looking for people that are reaching out to them and expressing interest in them. So you have to be in contact with other companies that you're interested in during the summer. That's quite important. Also, if you're going to attend, you may think about attending the conferences again in your second year. And if you are there contacts you have to be making with companies that you have to be seeing, that you would want to be seeing at the conferences. Just a couple of things. I assume you're all in the right spots. You're all going to do great. You're all going to get your internships, but just in case, keep your networks open. And you're probably all sick and tired of networking. And you heard what the panel said, is guess what you're going to do when you get to work in the summer? Network. And companies expect it. Talk to the team, understand the proper way of networking, but networking is expected during the summer.